One of the most frequent questions I get asked is how to make money. Now that may be the right question for some people, but a lot of people need to know how not to waste money. You could make hundreds of millions of coins and then directly regress by making a few mistakes. It might seem rich coming from me, and it is pretty easy for me just to stand around on my island, stream and get contraband, and that's how I make money. Or is it? Well, majority of the time I actually play Skyblock at the moment, I spend playing Iron Man and I don't even play on this profile. But I never used to have an unlimited stream of contraband. My main money making method for a long time was AH flipping for months on months on months. And naturally when AH flipping and saving up for items, you pick up quite a few tips. If you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code Nitros. It gets yourself 5% off. I see a lot of players, usually earlier game players, buy and sell armor, pets and weapons all the time like they're going out of fashion. Fair enough if you buy a weapon and it's just not as good as you actually thought it was going to be, so you end up selling it. For instance, let's say that you buy this giant sword for 200 million coins. Now, let's say you decide to sell it. Okay, so first of all, the actual listing fee to put this on the AH is 2.5% of however much you're selling the item for. So in this case, if you relisted the item straight back up for 200 million coins, you've already lost 5 mil. You would then also have to pay 1% tax on the item once it's sold, meaning that the item that you sold for 200 million coins, you would only actually receive 193 million. Meaning that in this case you will lose 7 million coins just from buying and selling the item. I think that's also very important to note for people who AH flip or maybe just see a decent flip. Maybe you don't regularly AH flip, maybe you just see a decent flip and you think, oh, that's a good margin. However, for items under 10 million coins you have to account for a 2% loss. Items greater than 10 million but less than 100 million you'll have to account for a 3% loss including the tax. And for items over 100 million coins in value, you'll have to equate for a 3.5% loss, that's including the tax. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, become part of the 25%, there's no reason not to. Also, you should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of every single video. Now, something that naturally happens on the auction house is getting undercut. For instance, this person here has listed this tiger pet for 42.9 million coins. Of course, someone with a very similar one, obviously, you know, you can just pretend it has the same pet item, has listed it for 100k less. Now at this point, people then have the tendency just to take the item down and relist it again. However, on an item like a tiger pet, that would basically mean that you would pay an extra 2% in listing fees, which means if you were to list the item, take it down and relist it and then it sells, you will actually lose 5% of what the item is worth. On items greater than 100 million coins, this same situation would end up in a 5.5% loss. Now, if an item has been listed for a long time, you might just think you'd be better off cutting your losses, relisting. You know, the time that it takes this item to sell could impact basically the amount of coins you have and therefore potentially how many more coins you can make. So if you have the pricing completely wrong, then sometimes it is wise just to cut your losses and relist an item and lose coins. It just depends on the situation, because at the end of the day, time is money. Something else that you should do is make sure that there's adequate space in your bank for your interest to accumulate. Of course, if your bank is full like mine and, you know, you're not actually going to gain any interest because there's nowhere for the coins to go. Also, invest in a good minion setup. Not everybody can play Skyblock every single day. What if you just go away for a few days and come back and decide to take a bit of a break? I mean, at least if you have a decent minion setup down, you might come back to maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 million coins depending on what your setup is. As opposed to coming back to 3 half-full snow minions that's going to get you about 200k. Don't get me wrong, Melon's probably not the way to go for money, but that's besides the point. This is a mess. Now let's talk about the Bazaar. For instance, I go farming and I come back with 12 nether warts. I know, very profitable. To insta-sell these 12 nether warts, we're going to get in return 29.6 coins. If you sell those same nether warts to the NPC and insta-sell them, you get 48 coins, which is substantially more. Even if you were to put a sell offer up for these nether warts, you'd still get less than the NPC, and by quite a substantial amount. What I'm trying to say is when you're selling items, whether it's from minions, farming, mining, it could be anything. Double check the prices, double check the NPC sell price, double check the insta sell price, and double check the sell offer price. Now in most cases, the Bazaar is basically designed for you to be able to sell to the Bazaar and make more profit from the NPC. At the end of the day, they don't really want people selling things to the NPC. However, depending on the time of day or just basically the economy, sometimes this can happen. Now, in terms of buy and sell prices, now these can differ, the margins can differ massively depending on the item. For instance, you take part in Diana and you drop a Chimera book. Now, if you want to insta-sell this Chimera book, you'll receive just less than 111 million coins. If you put a sell offer up for this Chimera book and wait for somebody to insta-buy a Chimera book, that means you'll receive just more than 120 million coins. Essentially what this means is that your patience of waiting for that to sell is rewarded by an extra 10 million coins. But if I was to drop a book like this, I think I'd definitely be putting a sell offer up. Considering 10 million coins is, you know, it's like on this item, it's like an 8% difference or something. It's not really something you'd want to be missing out on. Honestly, I think one of the main things to actually mention in this video is keep your account safe and don't get scammed. Scams nowadays come in hundreds of different forms. It's kind of annoying that you have to look out for it because obviously it's ridiculously scummy. Technically it's not allowed, but when have you ever seen anyone get banned for scamming? I've never seen it. Now, my advice would be, if you're wanting to ever really buy an item, buy it from the auction house. You know what? Same with selling. I mean, it's much safer to sell through the auction house. You don't run the risk of accidentally trading an item or coins for something that isn't what you actually thought it was. Of course, the benefit of not selling through the auction house is, well, if you sell an item to someone via trade menu, you don't lose on tax and fees and things like that, and that's why it's so appealing, and that's why lowballing works. However, if you're ever trading for like a higher tier weapon like a Hyperion or something like that, okay, in a regular texture pack, a Hyperion is just an iron sword, but if you actually put the First Sky texture pack on, you can clearly see it's a Hyperion, because it looks like a Hyperion, not just an iron sword. If you put your life savings into a trade menu thinking that you're getting traded for a Hyperion and at the last minute somebody changes it for this, you're immediately going to see that it's not a Hyperion. Whereas if you didn't have this texture pack on or this resource pack, without hovering over the item, you wouldn't know which one is which, or if you've actually indeed been traded a Hyperion or any other item for that actual case. Other scams actually revolve around the auction house. So sometimes you may come across somebody in a lobby. I don't know how this comes about, to be honest. I've never seen it in action, but I've heard that people have fallen for this, and I've heard of people that have seen this happen to people. And basically, you'll be told by somebody, usually they target people with really high purses, so they can know they can actually afford the expensive items that they shouldn't be buying. And they'll say, for instance, I don't know, listing livid daggers for 700k each, and of course they're worth 7 million. So they may list 5 livid daggers for 700k each, but they'll list one for 700 million. Now, without thinking, you might just instantly buy all of them, thinking they're all worth 700k, and not realise that you've just paid 700 mil for a livid dagger. Now, to me, that sounds really far-fetched, and I don't know how anyone could actually fall for it, but I can imagine in the moment, it's happened to a lot of people before. I'd just be careful, because that's just sketchy. And the chances are, if that happens to you, then make sure, if you've got a high purse, you're probably being targeted. If you ever let somebody borrow one of your items, make sure that you always get adequate collab, because if someone did decide not to give the item back, or if their account gets banned, or if something happens where they basically just don't end up giving the item back, then at least you'll have the value of the item, which you could then just use to buy the item back. Now, something else to take note of is the colour of armour that you might have. Okay, some people may try to offer you a ridiculously low amount of money for exotic armour that you might not even know that you have. I've heard stories of people selling sets of armour that are worth hundreds of million coins for a mere 10 to 20 mil. Most of the time early game players will be targeted with this because the person who's targeting them expects them not to know how much the armour set is actually worth. Anyway, that just about wraps up today's video. I hope it's helped in some capacity. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.